Welcome back, guys. This week we're talking about acceptance, a topic that gets criticized a lot. Whenever you go to therapy and all your friends make fun of you, oh, what are you doing? Going to therapy, accepting yourself, talking about your dad, dwelling on the past, the implication being you're not really growing. You're just accepting. Well, what does that get you? You're just talking about things that you can't change. Acceptance, it is mental masturbation, emotional masturbation. But I'm here to say that acceptance is actually necessary for growth when you learn how to accept yourself in the correct way. In fact, you can't have growth without acceptance, and you can't have acceptance when you do it in the correct way without some kind of growth. This really speaks to a dichotomy in not only psychology, but the past maybe 25 years of Western civilization. We're correcting Western civilization while talking about acceptance on the same video. First, though, what even is acceptance? What are we accepting? What are we being accepting of? What are we accepting about ourselves? See, the problem is a lot of psychologists don't really get into specifically what that is, and they can't because they don't understand psychology on a fundamental level. There is no tesseract. Remember that from one of the mind videos? There's no tesseract into our unconscious mind, so there is no real structure for accepting. But when you learn how your emotions work, when you learn how your anxiety and anger work, it becomes very clear what we're accepting when we are, practicing self-acceptance. We're looking at unconscious anxiety, threats we've been avoiding, unconscious anger, sadness, needs we've been avoiding, and we learn how to talk about them. We learn how to get in touch with them. Because what happens when we do that? Here's our line of consciousness. Everything below the dotted line is unconscious, above is conscious. When we become aware of what's in here, when we ask ourselves specific questions, what am I avoiding? And what do I need? Around our two fundamental issues, the two archetypal issues of our existence, authority and intimacy, our father and our mother, what do we need? What are we avoiding in these two areas? Talk about them in a lot of different ways, with perhaps different people, creating secure attachment, being honest about who we are with faces right here. I'm trying to be as concrete as possible about this. Then these issues come up and we feel them as either anxiety or anger 100% of the time. A great movie that demonstrates what I'm talking about here, Home Alone. I think I'm going to be talking about Christmas movies this month, and Home Alone is one of my favorite Christmas movies, top 5 at the very least. Kevin McAllister is left home alone. Well, his family isn't accepting of who he is. He's not very accepting of his family. He wishes that his family was gone, and there's a storm the night before. Everybody wakes up in a panic, leaves in a hurry. They accidentally forget Kevin at home, subconsciously accidentally, right? Accidentally on purpose. They kind of wanted to leave him home. I think that was probably the implication. And Kevin is left home alone to explore not only his house, but his community, to see different parts of himself. And if there ever was a representation of our psyche in film, it is a big, empty house that we're left alone to explore. And that's what Kevin was doing, right? He was going in Buzz's room, looking through all his secret chest that he's not allowed to look at. He's watching angels who have filthy souls while eating ice cream in the afternoon, something he's not supposed to, he's exploring different parts of himself. Oh, and he is becoming accepting of his fear of the furnace in the basement. All symbolic of just getting in touch with who he is, leading up to the final acceptance. Just having that conversation in the church with old man Marley, the salt guy. just incorporating different does a bunch of other stuff. He goes shopping on his own, and he goes and sees Santa and has like a real frank, down-to-earth discussion. Look, I know you're not Santa, you're one of Santa's helpers, but give him a message. Just becoming accepting of who he is. And once he does that, the growth, the confrontation of the threat in his life, the wet bandits, Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci, it kind of just happens naturally. Defeating those guys was really no big deal after he learns to accept himself. It's all a rich metaphor when you think about it. But what are some instances, or not instances, but how can we tell when we are accepting? Because we all have maybe an ex-girlfriend who you feel wronged you. And you go, well, I'm accepting of it because I'm aware of it. But just being aware of it isn't truly being accepting of it. There's being, conscious that it happened, or conscious of her, but not really accepting the situation for what it is. And you got to accept it. Why? Again, because unless you accept it, you can't truly be conscious of it fully. And if you're not conscious of it fully, you're not going to use it for growth. So there's 3 indications that show you are accepting as opposed to just simply being aware. The one is just emotional ease around the topic. So if your friends are talking and the topic of your ex-girlfriend comes up and you feel like an emotional tightness, if you have issues with your father and people start talking about fathers and you're like, oh God, just don't ask me about my dad, then you're not really accepting, though you may be aware of it to some degree. And really this leads in the second one. How easily can you talk about it? So, let's say you failed a class in college. You're of course always aware that you failed the class, but can you talk about it without it being difficult? You have emotional literacy. This is really a corollary of the first one. Do you have emotional literacy around the topic? And you talk about it objectively. And you can do this well when you're talking about, whatever the thing that you have difficult accepting yourself, the difficult accepting. You can do it well when there's just this easy flow of conversation about it. You can talk about it objectively, almost as if, let's say you failed a class in college, almost as if you're talking about somebody else who failed a class in college. There's just this ease to it. And then maybe the third corollary is blame. How much do you blame your ex-girlfriend still, or your father, or the teacher who failed you in college? Not that you're always to blame, but again, this is about how can we look at this objectively? How can we say, well, I could have done better here. Maybe my, ex-girlfriend made some mistakes. Maybe she wasn't the best for me, but, maybe, again, it goes back to me. Maybe it's my responsibility to pick a girl who's going to be a better situation for me. Maybe I'm ultimately to blame because I didn't put in the work that it took to figure out the kind of girlfriend I needed. So I just ended up falling for whatever girl happened to be interested in me, and that was it. Well, you can see how you can be, as you become accepting of that, it just becomes a lot easier to talk about it, and you don't blame the girlfriend, the teacher, or your father, whatever your situation happens to be. This is how we accept ourselves, by getting in touch with our unconscious, asking ourselves what we're avoiding, going to therapy, creating attachments, journaling, being as honest as we possibly can be. Like I always say, to be as honest as we are emotionally ready to be given where we are in that moment. And keep digging. You're never going to be done with this process of figuring out what's going on. But then, just to make sure we're not caught in acceptance, although if you do acceptance right, it will lead to growth, but then the anxiety comes up, we confront the anxiety, we face Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci head on. That's growth. And of course, growth, like I said in the beginning of the video, growth leads to more acceptance. Why? Because now you have the confidence, now you feel you're much more capable of looking at your anxiety, of becoming accepting of yourself, and ultimately we have a difficult time accepting ourselves because it's shrouded in anxiety. But I mean, here we see, once we diagram emotions in the correct way, it's not acceptance and growth, it is being out of touch and not growing, and acceptance and growth over here. You got to have both. And if you're growing and not accepting, whatever you're not accepting, I can guarantee you will come back to ruin your life at the worst possible time. So it's just better to be honest with yourself. You know, like I always say, if you think that if you think that especially lying to a girl is a good idea, try it. Go ahead. Just try it once, just to prove to yourself that you're not smart enough to get away with it. And I would say the same thing with acceptance. Try to grow without accepting your past and everything about you. Accepting yourself doesn't mean you have to like it, but please try to grow without accepting who you are, just to prove to yourself that it's going to make things a lot worse in the long run. That's it for this week, guys. Please like and subscribe. Tell a friend. Watch Home Alone. It's a great movie. I'll be back next week with a new topic and a new Christmas movie. There's lots to choose from. But yeah, like and subscribe. Talk about this stuff. Keep being emotionally at ease with who you are, talking about who you are, taking responsibility for everything that's happened to you until you see that the best way to truly grow is to get in touch with who you are.